Welcome to Formula Drift Insider. I'm Ryan Sage. Well, this is our last and final full Insider episode of the season. But have no fear, we'll be releasing Insider segments throughout the offseason to keep you relatively entertained while we wait to enter the 10th year of Formula Drift in 2013. On this episode of Insider, we conclude the season at Irwindale Speedway with complete and behind-the-scenes coverage of arguably the most insane and exciting event in Formula Drift history. So without further hesitation, let's dive right in. If you recall from previous episodes of Insider, the championship mathematically was possible for up to 7 drivers. Your leader, Vaughn Gittin Jr., down to 7th in points, Ryan Turk. First up, we started with qualifying. And as you know, qualifying is an extremely important aspect of accumulating championship points. And so therefore, it was quite possible that the championship could have been close to put away if Vaughn Gittin Jr. stayed consistent with his performance. Well, that would not be the case as Vaughn Gittin Jr. ended up qualifying 9th. In the meantime, his teammate Justin Pollock would qualify 2nd, but it was Rhys Millen who was the clear leader in qualifying as he came out with the most impressive run of the day, scoring a huge number of 97. So as Jared would say, the gauntlet had been laid down and it seemed like Rhys Millen was out for blood. But as fate would have it, Vaughn Gittin Jr., Daigo Saito, Daijiro Yoshihara, and Rhys Millen would all end up on the same side of the bracket. Pollock, Turk, and Osbo would be on the other side. Things were heating up to say the least. The first test up for Millen would be in the top 16 where he faced Kyle Moham. Rhys would take the win and that would throw us right to our next battle between Patrick Mordaunt and Vaughn Gittin Jr. On the first run, Gittin would pull away from Mordaunt and take what seemed to be an advantage. But on the second run, Gittin would come off the bank with a plume of smoke in his face, and then he started to go offline. He adjusted, but in doing so, he forced himself into a spin behind Mordaunt. You could hear the entire stadium and the judging tower in concert gasp as Vaughn Gittin Jr. spun. We were all reliving the 2011 championship when Daijiro Yoshihara made a similar error and went out in the top 16. Vaughn would be knocked out and end his season with 529 points. This total would need to be matched by Rhys Millen or Daigo Saito as they were the only drivers left with a real chance to knock out Vaughn Gittin Jr. After the shock of the moment had settled, we moved on to our next battle. Conrad Grunwald, and you guessed it, Daigo Saito. The rivalry of the season meets one more time in the final event of the year. But this time, there would be no controversy. Though Conrad did look exceptional, Daigo would win and move on to face Matt Field. But first, it would be Rhys Millen versus the Possum, Patrick Mordaunt. Pat would give Rhys a good run on his lead, but ultimately, the combination of the lead and chase runs gave Rhys Millen the unanimous win. So Rhys was one step closer to the championship, but he would need to beat the winner of Saito Field and then win the event to take the crown. Saito and Field was one of the standout battles of the night. On the first run, Matt Field would have an amazing lead run. He was high on the bank, nice on transition, and then ran very deep on the inner bank. Daigo would have no problem on proximity, but he would waver on the bank and then take a lower line on the inner oval. He did, however, get back on line and extremely close to Field across the finish line. On the next run, Daigo would lead and Matt would stay close the entire way, especially on the inner bank, where he went so deep that he inadvertently made contact with the wall. He would stay on Daigo and then close the door even further across the finish line. The judges were unanimous. It was a one more time battle. The next battle would be no less exciting, only this time Daigo cleaned up some of his inconsistencies in the first run, and though he wasn't door to door with Field, he stayed close to him the entire run and then closed the door at the finish line. When Daigo led, he slightly pulled on the bank, but then Matt closed it. He slightly pulled off the first inner clip. Matt closed it, and then tapped the wall, causing sparks to fly into the night. Then Matt comes in on a slightly lower line on the inner bank, but nothing too noticeable. Both drivers transition and come across the finish line in tow with each other. It was an amazing battle with both drivers giving it their all, and for Matt Field, it would be an all-time performance as he took advantage of the moment and seized the opportunity to show the world that he can battle the best. In the end, it was a split decision with Brian Eggert going one more time and Andy Yen and Ryan Lantain both voting for Daigo Saito. So while Matt Field's night is over, Daigo Saito now has to face Rhys Millen for the most important battle of the night. If Daigo wins this battle, he will have enough points to secure the championship. If Rhys wins, he still needs to win the event to be the 2012 Formula Drift champion. On the first run, Rhys comes out on a tear, pulling away from Daigo on every part of the track. To his credit, Daigo does have a good line and decent angle, but in terms of proximity, Rhys owned it, and it's clear he has an advantage going into run number 2. The drivers leave the line with Daigo in the lead position. Daigo stays high on the bank with Rhys in tow on a mid-line. Rhys pushes past the inner clip, transitions into the inner bank with tons of smoke on the track, and boom! Rhys hits the wall right behind Daigo with his wheel flying off and parts hitting the tarmac. For Rhys Millen, his amazing late season run had come to an end. Daigo Saito is your 2012 Formula Drift champion. But the event was not over then, not by a long shot. We still need to have an event winner, and we've only been discussing one side of the bracket. All the while the craziness on the left side of the bracket was keeping us glued to the championship, Ryan Tuerck and Justin Pollock went on a tear and found themselves in the final 4 to battle each other. Right out of the gate, Justin initiates into the bank with Tuerck right there. Tuerck does have some slight wavering, but he does a good job keeping proximity, and it is a great battle so far. Both drivers hit the inner clip pretty decently, and then Justin Pollock does an amazing flick transition into the inner bank, rides the wall, tapping it along the way. Tuerck loses a bit of ground to Pollock as they transfer off the inner bank and into the flats where JTP pours it on and crosses the finish line with Tuerck not far behind, but with a bit less angle. On the second run, Tuerck jumps out to a lead against Pollock, who seems to be wanting to catch him off the bank, which is what he does. But this time, JTP falls back off again on the inner bank with Tuerck nice and high and more angle. Tuerck does miss the inner clip off the bank and JTP follows instead. Justin gets back on Tuerck's rear bumper and they cross the finish line together. It was a back and forth battle and the judges voted unanimously for another one more time. So both drivers lined up again and we were off to the races. With both drivers having very similar lead and chase runs from the previous battle, except JTP did tighten up his chase a bit more, and it ended up splitting the judges with 2 votes for JTP and one more time. So Justin Pollock wins. So our final is set. It was JTP going up once again against Daigo Saito. And we go back to West Palm Beach where the event of the season happened and the history between these two drivers began. On the first run, Daigo was aggressive on the chase and gave JTP a run for his money, but JTP was just too consistent and too strong, and it was clear that he was one run away from winning the final event of the season and getting his revenge on Daigo Saito. On the next run, Daigo initiates, JTP is right there on his back bumper with maybe slightly lower angle. And then off the transition, JTP carries a ton of speed past the start-finish line, and like Angelo Forsberg and Rhys Millen before him, he smashes the inner bank hard, and the event quickly comes to an end as Daigo Saito not only wins the championship, but also the finale at the House of Drift, Irwindale Speedway. For the Japanese drifter, it was an up and down year. Marred with controversy and spectacular battles, he has certainly made his place in Formula Drift history. One thing is for certain, he can rest easy for a few months, but if I know the FD driver field, they will definitely be gunning for him come Long Beach next year. Well, that is it for this season's Formula Drift Insider. We'll kick off again next year as we approach the first round of competition in April with the infamous streets of Long Beach. Tickets are on sale now, so reserve your spot and join us for our 10th year of Formula Drift in 2013. For all the sponsors, fans, drivers, the FD staff, and of course, the professional hot chicks, I am Ryan Sage, and we'll see you in 2013.